showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most
Welcome to the program Boss Talk on Boss Television. Today is Wednesday, the 2nd day of August 2023, and this is the first edition for the 8th month in the year 2023. And I'm Julius Compton presenting. And gradually, very slowly but perfectly, we are moving towards the campaign, which is one of the crucial moments of the 2023 elections. On Saturday, it will officially kick off. We'll be talking more about the campaign period, what sort of campaign, what will be some of the messages that the who-be leaders, politicians will be sending out to the electorates to ensure that they can get respective state power. On Sunday marked the 33 years anniversary of the Lutheran Church massacre. It was so emotional. Tears and sorrow characterized that particular event. And up to present, they are still calling for, among other things, the establishment of war and economic crimes court in this country, and to ensure that those who committed heinous, if you will, atrocities against innocent people in Liberia can be brought to justice. We'll be talking about that with our guests who will shortly arrive in studio. And on today, the National Elections Commission will also have a meeting with presidential aspirants. One of the key issues they will be talking about has to do with how they can conduct themselves along with their supporters and partisans to ensure a free, fair, credible, and non-violent elections. We'll be talking about that as well on the show. And on yesterday, Liberia, among other countries, distances themselves from unconstitutional take of power. Currently, there is a great issue taking place in Niger, and Liberia is amongst other countries who have frowned on that. And Liberia is saying through the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador D. Maxwell Sakimaya Sr., that they will not support unconstitutional take of power. You already know Liberia has now enjoyed over 17 years of uninterrupted peace. The dark days are over, and this country, among other nations in West Africa and beyond, will not support such a habit. So this is the program, Boss Talk on Boss Television. Try to bring you some of the training issues and some of the talking points that we will be moving on with the show up until 10:30. Again, my name is Julius Compton. We are taking this break, and when we come back, we usher in our guest. He's the Secretary General of the Civil Society Human Rights Advocacy Platform, Adaman Dempster. We take this break. To be right back.
Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4.
It's good that you rejoin us on our program, and this is the program Boss Talk on Boss Television. If you're just coming our way, you are watching Boss Talk on Boss Television, live on Satcom Channel 4. Our guest is already in studio, Mr. Adaman Kiatamba Dempster. And he's here in studio. He's the Secretary General of the Civil Society Human Rights Advocacy Platform. We will be discussing a wide range of national issues, and especially as we are gradually moving towards the elections in Liberia. So first I'd like to start off by saying that Mr. Dempster, welcome to the program. As always, thank you for coming, sir.
It's a pleasure, Julius, and of course, I had to beat the traffic to get here, but anyway, better to be here though.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Just start the ball rolling. Just on Sunday, 33 years ago, survivors and victims observed the Lutheran Church massacre. And it was very emotional, the scene, listening to some of the testimonies. How was the program, Francis?
Well, I mean, like you said, it was an emotional moment. You know, we still struggle with the issue of Civil War era the atrocities. That is, Liberia came from an era where the rule of law was broken apart, constitution was suspended, and of course, all other normal practices were being brought to a shutdown because of the Civil War. And I have discussed that. How did that come about? And I did my own reflection, the research, and I found out that after the 1985 elections, and the outcome of that elections created disenchantment, dissatisfaction. It was overwhelmingly declared as a fraudulent election, which brought in, at the time, the junta leader, Samuel Kanyado, who left from the barrier as a military president, transformed into a civilian and took part in the election. And there was a claim that the election was stolen, the fraudulent election was rigged. And in 4 years, we saw Liberia rolling back into conflict. That was 1989 and onward going to the 1990s, and the Civil War started. The Civil War, which have not brought total healing, have not been able to allow us to bring closure to the atrocities that were committed during that period. So citizens, families, and of course government still found it difficult how they are actually moving towards bringing an end to that bitter past. So neither to see it, witnessing or hearing what happened in 1990, July 29th, the night of 29th, and then roll into the 30th. That is, the summary execution started either around 10 o'clock, and between 10 o'clock up to 12, turning into the 30th. Horrifically, those scars are still being seen from the physical appearance of some of the people we saw on Sunday. And of course, the churches itself, that is the St. Peter Lutheran Church, I think they lost their counseling pastor, supervising pastor, who was head of the shelter that were hosting the people who came there for shelter, for refuge. He also was killed. So the church itself is also wounded, coupled with the over 600 people that were killed, because we got a note on Sunday that there were more than 900 people in the church. Wow. So we just, the TRC or otherwise calculated 600, but it was more than 600 people that were killed. And painfully, I saw a murdered one, Mrs. Dan, who said her husband was killed. Her daughter was at the age of 3 years old when they chopped her hand. Her son also at the age of 5. I saw both of them on Sunday with their limbs being chopped up. It was emotional. I saw older people, some women who still have bullets in their bodies that still came forward, and of course there had not been a process of healing. That is, from a medical standpoint, there is no healing. Mentally, they also still have deep scars and wounds, lingering in their mind. So it was a moment of emotion, and of course, but painful. A level of cry, with people sharing tears, and of course, it was so much. But just to inform this conversation is that after 33 years, what has happened? The military.
Sorry, before that, what are they saying now as they speak, the victims and survivors?
What
are they pushing for? What are they saying?
So the purpose of the commemoration on the July 30th, 2023 was basically to have a reflection, have a sober reflection on what happened at the St. Peter Lutheran Church, because that atrocity actually claimed the world attention. That the St. Peter Lutheran Church massacre is still being talked about around the world today. So victims from that, the survivors from that identical massacre, I never knew that I was able to see pretty close to 100 people who survived from that identical church, though 90% of them have some form of scars and injury that they still carry. So it was an opportunity to remember 33 years and then reflect on what happened, coming out of what happened, where we are right now, what will be in the next 10 years or the next 5 years, what will happen, Will there be some of the people that still struggle with pain, still be alive? What are the conversation is basically, what is our government position in terms of bringing healing? Like my colleague, the guy from the Lutheran Church Victims Association said, the Rwandan military took over and took responsibility for some of the mass atrocities that happened in Rwanda as a result of 1994, genocide that took place in Rwanda. So the government need to take some sort of
So you want
action.
the army to take similar.
So the recommendation there was that borrowing from what happened in Rwanda could also be replicated to Liberia. That is, the military can step in, because on the records of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, the AFL slacks the SATU of the then government forces carry on the massacre. And fortunately for us, we still have the former the commander, ex-General Moses Thomas, who was prosecuted in the United States court, which I could talk about much more, though he fled back to Liberia, escaping his sentencing. He's in Liberia right now. Citizens are saying, survivors are saying, even we as advocates, we are saying that if we don't hold people accountable, the culture of impunity continue to linger on. And that fresh mind still live with the people, because you still see the men who pull the trigger, killing your father or taking away your mother. It still to linger in your mind. Fresh. So the government right now should take a responsibility to see as to how people who are listed allegedly for these atrocities be held accountable. We can't just live in a society where people who are accused of committing crime, we shelter, we shield, and we provide protection for them. It don't help the victim or the survivor society.
How do you want that
Sunday,
to be done specifically?
so the conversation on Sunday is basically to reaffirm and draw the attention of the government and the international community that crimes are committed in 33 years. Nobody had done anything. That is not fair. That is not in the context of good governance. That is not in favor of rule of law. So there is a need that the government take the needed action, the needful action, to be able to ensure that those crimes. No, but the issue is that when someone kills somebody, how do we put it? When someone is accused of slaughtering, carrying on mass execution, summary execution, how do you put it? Is there a way better that we can write it? Because you have taken life, you didn't give life, and you took life. So what happened to those people? They should be held accountable. That is, a mechanism or a framework should be put into place to bring these people to justice. That would be a first stage. Another aspect has to do with reparation. These people have suffered so much. The injury is so deep. Some of them don't have the money to go to hospital. Can the government, like the people are saying, if the military can take responsibility, you can make the 14 military hospital a place for some of these people who are injured to go to start clinical, to start examining them, to know where they still have medical challenge, so that they can be a first hand support from the military. These are things that will help. They will even help to reduce the pain. There's so much pain that the people still suffer. That will serve as an opening, as an effort of making progress. But you can't ignore the fact that people who are trained, they are master in carrying on atrocities, killing people without remorse. They still live in our society. We have to create a line. We have to draw a line between those kind of people and us. This can be political. They should not be treated with a political, interest, or because no, these are things that we have to come out as a country. Rwanda did it. They're moving forward. Sierra Leone did it. They're moving forward. Other countries have done it. They're moving forward.
33 years now we're talking about.
In 33 years, but the issue is...
What do you think is happening? What you observe is the issue of this dragging. 33 years now.
33 years. That is, for me, I would describe it as government showed no interest, because in 33 years, we're talking about over 600 people killed summarily in one room. And those who were responsible for pulling the trigger are living in the society today, and nothing happened to them. It's a shameful situation. Even those guys who did it should also be ashamed of themselves that we led the Lutheran Church massacre. We killed in a single night over 600 people. We chop people like we're chopping, animals. You understand? These are no human being in the right mind should do this kind of thing. And in this morning time, we still find shelter for them. We still find protection for them. It's deeper. Like like the diplomatic corps, the U.S. Deputy Ambassador spoke. Until now, they are still prosecuting people for crimes that were committed in the World War II. You understand? Mm-hmm. So it is not late for Liberia. If we're saying that we want this country to move forward, we can bury the wrongs and claim that Liberia will still be peaceful. Peace is not only about the silence of the gun. Yeah. Peace is about those people who are injured right now, Julius. I'm sorry. I will have an opportunity you can interact. Some of them can come, you talk to them. Mm-hmm. Let them speak for themselves so that you have an opportunity to really feel what we have seen.
Mr. Dempster, people are also saying that this has happened, like we stated, 33 years. Let's back on, be back on. Let's forget about digging out old wounds and stuff.
You see, but no wounds are being healed, Julius. We'll not be honest. You know, it's sad and it's emotional when we're having this conversation because myself don't feel so healthy, you know, talking about the kind of horrific atrocities that we saw during the civil conflict. I never left Liberia throughout my entire life during the Civil War, except after I've been traveling back to back. But I lived entirely throughout Liberia, and we saw how people calculated, they argued and debated on this woman is pregnant, which child she's carrying. So at the end of the argument, somebody said, okay, you're open her, slaughter her, open her stomach, let's see whether she has a boy or she has, you know, those are not, we should discourage those kind of sin. And those guys who were responsible for these are still actively around here. You see what happened in the South region now? If internationally, regionally, continental-wise, we don't take root or take the action that will discourage coup d'etats, you know, the overthrowing of democratic government and bringing in military, it has a way of sparing out and giving room for conflict.
We'll talk more about that. This is the program Boss Talk on Boston Television. We're taking this break. When we come back, we'll move straightly into that regional crisis and what does it mean for Liberia as we're gradually moving up to our elections.
Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on SATCOM Channel 4.
Welcome back to the program Boss Talk on Boston Television. With me, Julius Compton, and our guest in studio is Adam and Kate Dempster. Gradually, we will be moving on to the elections in October.
Yeah.
And Saturday, campaign will officially open.
Yes.
But before going to that, what has been is the role of the civil society relative to civic education amongst the people? Now we have 50 to 60% of the voters who will be first-time voters.
Obviously. So, from the angle of the civil society, I think that there are a lot of follow-up from civil society.
Have you started already?
Yeah, so some level of engagement from civil society system angle has actually started, is ongoing. That is, even during the voter registration process, we also followed that during the exhibition where the neck place, the printed names and photos and ID numbers of voters who have registered. During that process, we also follow up. And then during the candidate nomination process where candidates that were, people that were interested in running into the elections had to submit according to Nexus guidelines, and then there's a screening process that allowed your documents to be examined, to cross-check them, and then see as to how your informations are factual, and the issue of domiciles, and of course your citizens' status are in full compliance with the Constitution, and of course the guidelines of the Election Commission, and at the end of which you can be you giving a document, declaring you as an aspirant. So the whole process at the SKD rigorously, we passed through. We did an evaluation. I think there was some good work done on the part of NEC, and they set up over there. Although the previous elections, similar process were being carried out, but what we saw during this process, 2023 evaluation was more alarming, was good, was up to task. I could describe it as being more professional, and I hold them high on that aspect from the civil societies and the human rights own lenses of evaluation. So coming now to the process of going into voter civic education is where we think a lot need to be done, because the right to be informed and the right to information are all fundamental rights on the human rights, and of course right to information should always be available to the people, because when people are not informed rightfully, they may wrongly or by ignorance not go in line with what the guidelines may look like. So I think that part is a part that we want it to be rigorous. We want the National Election Commission to put more support, more effort in there, because not everyone will listen by radio. But what are those mechanisms that have been put into place to reach far to the towns that are very far from being reached? Even radio or television don't reach to the identical people. There had to be a way that information had to reach them.
You have a part to play too.
We have a part to play from civil society angle, and I know there are a couple of organizations, civil society, that are also working with NEC, and we also have a partnership under our current UN Human Rights Commission support under the Peace Building Fund. We have support for that, but we purposely going to be looking at human rights in elections, but it also allows us also to speak on the importance of participation, the importance of decision making, and citizens should follow the process, should take advantage of the process, because elections is for everyone, and the decisions that help to shape the governance of the country come from the people.
You said monitoring human rights in elections as part of what you people will be doing.
Yeah, I'll come to that.
What are the key issues?
I will come to that, but I'm just saying that we also using our space as human rights to also speak the right to participation. They are fundamental. So citizens should not sit by and say, no, we won't take part in the election. I know people may not be satisfied with how things are like today, the governance, but it also allows you to participate, and your participation will help to even shape and put the government or the governing process in a better perspective. So we don't want people sitting idle and think that to participating in election is a waste of time. It is not a waste of time. It's a constitutional right. Those are fundamental rights that you should exercise, you should enjoy, so that tomorrow you can say, we took this decision to get Liberia to where it is today, either in a positive way or in a negative way. So those are things that we also want to amplify as the voter civics and voter education kickstarts. Those are things that we are also going to wait in. We're going to talk. I'm going to hold joint press statement. We're also going to go into the county to speak to the different districts and people. So these are things we're looking at. But with specific angle on human rights in elections,
what will you be looking for?
We have checklists. So
for example,
our checklist, basically, we first of all done evaluation of the voter registration process, the exhibitions, and the candidate nomination. And I think I just give my fair analysis on that. So those are all in line with what human rights call for. That is the fairness, the transparent postures, and of course the credible happiness around elections. Those are things that we look for in election from a human rights based approach. But we also want to see, during the process of campaigning, the election period, how the issue of security is being...
Before we go to that...
We'll go to security, but they are part of the checklist.
Yeah, sorry, before we go to that checklist, still in line with what you've advocated for, generally, civil society organizations. Unfortunately, this aspect did not happen, and that is the 30% women.
Yeah. So I think that's
very frustrated with that. That's participation.
That's one of the aspects that I should have actually mentioned, because when we did a candidate evaluation, the feedback we got from the NEC, and it was something that they didn't have control over, because you should have had the legislature passed that into law, that is making it mandatory. But unfortunately, we don't have that enacted. But the next stage tried to push that candidates should have women representation on either their party, ticket, and of course, in the 30% range. So that's something that the NEC continue to push. But unfortunately, you don't have a legislation on it. You don't have a law that was passed by the legislature making it compulsory. But what we continue to say is that from the gender-based perspective, women participation in the election is crucial. It's very important because it allows women representation, women participating in election, to also have the opportunity to speak for women who are underprivileged, women who don't have the opportunity. So fellow women will also raise the bar for other women who don't have the opportunity to reach up there. So we advocate, and it's a human rights issue, that we encourage women participation, and no process of suppressing women or creating a bottleneck to deny women or discriminate against women should be encouraged. We come against that very strongly. We want women participating in elections should not be stereotyped, should not be in any way marginalized because of their gender, and let the process be a process that will accommodate women so women can participate in decision making of this country. It's very cardinal important.
I want to take you back
country.
to your checklist.
Okay, so the checklist is going to look at the issue of security.
Yes.
I know we
specifically on security.
So security. Let me come back to the strength of security. What is the strength of our security right now? When I had the opportunity to speak with the leadership of the Liberian National Police at a certain point of time, they still grapple between 3,005, 3,000. That is just the police.
On the overall, it's very limited.
It's very limited.
Alarm over that.
And then we're talking about the population. The current census is putting us 5 million or so against 3,000 police. That is something that the ratio may not even be able to help, a whole community pay a security person of police representation. That is something that's very important that we want to highlight. But moreover, in the election, we are looking at state security that will be active in the election, should be operating in the confine and the posture or under the authority of the state.
And not partisan.
Not party security. And that is very serious because this is a national and constitutional process. So everyone playing a role in this constitutional process should be constitutionally constituted, given their given authority to play their role. So the security should not be a security that will be favoring one party and not favoring the other party. That is why when we say state security, they owe it to everyone taking part in the election, including the citizens. So protection in this election should be meant
for everyone
and guarded for everyone under National Security Manifesto. That should not be anything compromised. There should not be discrimination or favoring certain candidate or political party over the other political party.
What's next on the checklist?
The next on our checklist is that we're monitoring the language, speeches that are given, because we come against strongly hate speech. Speeches that will undermine the security and the peace of the country. We want to discourage that. So we're going to be watching what information politicians are putting out there, because it has the propensity of derailing the peace. It has a propensity of undermining and then creating insecurity for the state. We're also going to monitor that rigorously. That is why in our engagement, we're going to meet with political parties, leaders, independent candidates, including government, and people who participated in the election, to reaffirm our position on human rights principles and norms, that hate speech are discouraged. Any form of statement or instruction that will create violence, that will give room for violence, those human rights will be recorded and those responsible will be recommended.
Because I wanted to come to this point, 2023 election is just one of the many elections we have had and over the period, and these processes, human rights issues,
Right.
do this, don't do this, call for meetings, call for political party, candidates, let's do this to protect the peace. It has happened over the period, but at the same time, in some instances, some quarters will still see violence taking place.
Yeah,
Will you this time around hold them really accountable?
So
when
so
these
so
things
there
happen?
there are a couple of benchmarks that are already being reached. We witnessed the signing of the Farmington Declaration.
Mhm.
So we are reaffirming, and we will reaffirm that you don't put your signature to a document and then you go against such document. So that's one area that we are firmly engaging with all parties to respect the Farmington Declaration, that no one will go against the peace. Everyone participating in election will conduct themselves, and of course are supported in line with what the Farmington Declaration has spelled out. Point blank. You understand? We know in election there can be disenchantment. Even in the US, we've seen that around the world. You know, election processes, satisfying elections, sometimes not everyone will yield until later on things take shape. But what we kick against is the alarming. When things go out of hand, then of course the rule of law is broken down. You know, so the issue of security becomes alarming. Then of course violence to an extent that lead to destruction of properties and the taking of life become very much, alarming, where there is no control any longer. It becomes a serious situation. But we see that in the process of electionary process, there can be disenchantment after the entire process. But then the gravity of the disenchantment, or what are the issues that people are annoyed about, need to be evaluated, need to be investigated
before
decisions are made.
Okay.
So those are things that we monitor. That investigation must be made on allegations,
and then grave.
It should be there. So on the basis of that, then firm decisions can be made. So from a human rights angle, we will monitor, we will document, we will report based on facts, not on secondary source. So on the basis of that, we will say the human rights of these people or certain community was violated or have been violated on the basis of A, B, C, D. You understand? But in the process of even preparing to monitor, to document, and report on atrocities or human rights related issue, we are using our advocacy authority to also speak that everyone participating in elections should come in the election with a free mind and a mind of peace, a mind of oneness, because you do not want to take over a government that is criminally sinned, then people will not trust you for who you are. So the process of governing, the process of elections should be based on credibility, not on fraudulent grounds.
There are sectoral issues that the people will want, that you, civil society, will want to maybe hear or see the politicians talk about, that are currently affecting the country. What will be some of them? Maybe perhaps you might be expecting them to talk about sectoral wise, maybe health, education. What will be some of them on a list of priority? So
the important thing is that one does not go into elections vague. You must come with something. That is, there had to be a manifesto. What are you coming with to convene the electors to vote for you?
Are you expecting them to push on the terms of?
So there are a couple of things that we even going to engage them more.
Okay.
There are outstanding issues. We know there are issues of health, which we expect that the incoming election, those who vying for election, most especially the presidential candidate, will prioritize the issue of health. Because when we talk health, even in the Mosorado or Morovia Basin, you still don't have that quality healthcare system in place. So the issue of our health system, there is deficit around our health system. There is a need to have our health system boosted. So we want the issue of health to be a priority. Education should still be a priority. And of course, the issue of job, employment. You see, there will always be people complaining when there is no livelihood. When people don't have the opportunity to have a livelihood, then of course every day there will be disenchantment. The issue of livelihood need to be promoted in this country. meaning we have to find a way to create jobs. We have to find a way to bring investors that will invest in the country to be able to employ, because government may not absorb everyone, but the private sector could also help government in a greater way. So the issue of livelihood need to be a priority for each of the presidential candidates. That I can say presidential, and those senators and representatives will come with their own. But I normally have seen what has happened over the time. If you have the executive doing a budget that will cater to health, education, employment, the legislature should be firm to pass those into law. Then the pressure of having representatives and senators building hospital, building bridges, building road, paying school fees for people, it will reduce. Because it is not their responsibility. It is not the responsibility of legislators to pay school fees for people, to build hospitals, to build roads, you understand, and the latter to talk about. But if you have a budget and you have the Ministry of Public Works that should build road, not in a political nature, but building road in every community around the entire country, you give them the money. The issue is that sometimes there are roads that are selected. Some communities are selected purposes and they are allowed giving onto them rather than the other community. We're talking about holistic. We're talking about holistic development. Let it not be, that. Oh,
have you seen that already? Have you seen that?
We've seen that.
Where?
Even with the LEC, at a certain point of time, certain communities never got LEC because we got messages. You understand?
You authenticated those messages.
So I will say it in passing, and then we just move on. But these are no secret that I'm talking about. You understand? But we were talking about what the candidates should be bringing forward, and what we human rights want to propose is what we're talking about. I talk about health, education, livelihood, the issue of employment, jobs. You understand? Of course, the issue of building roads, connectivities is also important for us. Then, of course, what do we go for? We go for a stronger rule of law. A country where the law is not strong, there will be more crimes.
You said the law is not strong. What do you mean? Because people normally say in Liberia, we've got one of the best laws. We've got good laws on.
But we're not implementing them.
How can we do that?
We're not implementing them. That's what we're saying. The rule of law should be a rule of law that will not create impunity, that will not give certain people privilege over the next people.
Okay.
I can say that. You have even going to court now. If you find out the Dent, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, that is the dean of the Supreme Court, you remember he blended, the judiciary as being corrupt. You understand? So why would he say that? We should have
so he was also part of the corrupt system.
That's what I'm saying. So this is why we're talking about strong rule of law. If you have a strong rule of law, independent rule of law, where justice is described as being blind, no one will take bribe to render justice. You understand? No one will engage into any act to keep people perpetually behind bars without hearing their cases. We have a huge pretrial detainees list. This is why you got pretty close to 1,400 people at the Morea Center prison. You understand? When we have a rule of law that is flourishing, there will be speedy trial. There will be, rigorous at country level. There are processes. It's also, but we're saying that we can go back to the record. This is another thing that we just want to say that we're against the system. But we're seeing this because if it happens, it will reduce the burden on the government. It will also it will also create an atmosphere for those in the legal field to also be appraised for the kind of good things that will be happening. We're saying that when we have a strong rule of law that is not favorable to a certain group of people, the culture of impunity will not continue to live on in this country. And I come back to say the strong rule of law will also extend to holding people who are accused for committing crimes to be brought to justice. You understand? So some of the things that we're also going to be communicating with the presidential candidates, even representatives and senators, is that we want a war crimes court to be established to prosecute Civil War era crimes, past human rights violations that took away the life of over 250,000 people in this country, and no one has been held accountable in this country, but rather we created an opportunity. Those who are accused are given opportunity to work, are given opportunity to move around, to even participate in the democracies of the country.
You
so these are things
before,
that.
but it did not you any.
No, but
that your message is not resonating, or what is actually happening?
It's not that it's not resonating.
What is
that
it?
is why we want the government, because the government has not taken that position. We want the government.
Which government?
This government is still in. I mean, there's no new government. This government in Barcelona is the government that is on record for these very points that I'm raising. So it's not something strange. The only thing is that they play deaf ear to this issue, but our work is to remind them. Our work is to remind them until the government can live up to its obligation. We are here to always remind them. And in the context of not being confrontational, not that anyone is against the government, but the government is the government of the people, and the government should represent the interests of the people. So on this basis, we're saying that going into the election, even down to the last minute, if President Weah can take a decision, that would be a legacy that he himself will be proud of, because he been able to take a decision that will bring closure to crimes that were committed in the Civil War and holding people accountable. So it is part of our manifesto from a human rights perspective that all candidates will sign on to implementing the TRC report and ensuring that war and economic crimes court are established.
The government comprises 3 branches: executive, legislative, and judiciary.
Right.
For some case like this, we'll put out the judiciary. If the executive cannot listen or is still playing,
it doesn't go up to, because right now we're seeing what happened.
Going to the legislative.
No. The thing is, there are ongoing process with the legislature already. So I remember
some good signals.
So we got good signal. I can say that. The fact that during our advocacy, we had a resolution that was signed by more than 53 members of the 73 members of the House of Representatives that is currently sitting.
Do you see that possible? Some of the
so I'm coming back to you.
About are already in the legislature.
But I'm telling you that they may not sign, but this is why you have 73 members of the House of Representatives. And if we had 53 persons signing, or over 52 persons signing a resolution calling for the establishment of war and economic crimes court, it passes the two-third majority. The only roadblock that we've seen
to the Senate.
No, the only roadblock we've seen is that the Speaker of the House, he alone held on that identical resolution. So up to date, Speaker Buffer Chambers have been open about it. They held that resolution and did not allow that resolution to be put on the floor of the Houses in the decision. He has not given any reason. We made a lot of follow-up, because we don't just make follow-up with the legislature on our own, because we do have members of the legislature that we work with. Through committees. So at the time, you had a claims and petition committee. You had some very strong people on that committee. It was a joint committee as well. I remember the deputy speaker also attended series of our meetings, our consultancy meetings that we had on the issue of accountability. The Representative Larry Yankwet, a good number of people, Tomo Goswat and other people, Swakoko Dennis, who was heading that committee at the time. We made progress, and I can say proudly, the conversation around accountability for past human rights violations is no longer secret. It is a discussion that's
up. Don't you think you need to still push? This time around, they will need your votes, and so they might make some commitments, especially.
So it's also part of our engagement with those coming into the election, those who are coming as candidates, interests of participating in the government that will come in 2024. We also engage with them. We found we are going to be very definite, direct, that they will sign on to supporting the establishment of war and economic crimes court. But then more to that, we also want a rigorous implementation of the drugs law, because we've seen a good number of the society, that is a youthful population of Liberia, we are losing them by the day as a result of drugs. I think you heard about the Kush. That is the new on the block. The new on the block that is so devastating. I've seen how it treats people. I think we need to take a stand as a country to rescue Liberia, because the issue of drugs has a way of erasing a whole generation. So since we have a law that has been passed, and I heard that the president have signed, we need to implement. But in implementing, we have to be intentional, because Those who are engaged into importation of drugs need to be identified, arrested, investigated, prosecuted, and then that will bring discouragement. And those who are users of the drugs, there had to be medical support, there had to be a clinical process put into place to help them. That will also, rescue the lost youth populations that are moving towards using drugs, so that we can cut ahead of them, so that Liberia cannot lose a youthful generation. So I think those are things that we want to also push forward.
This is the program, The Boss Talk, on Boss and Television. Our guest in studio is Adam and Dempster, and we are discussing cross-cutting national issues on this platform. We're taking this break. When we come back, we'll get his perspective relative to the unconstitutional vacant power in the region, and especially as Liberia is gradually moving up to its election. What are the signals? What lesson can this country draw out from some of these things so that there cannot be a recurrence? After this break, with that issue, please be our guest.
Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on SATCOM Channel 4.
Many thanks for rejoining us on the program Boss Talk on Boss on Television, live on SATCOM Channel 4 with me, Julius Compton. This is the midweek edition of the show. On yesterday, the government released a strong word statement, and especially from the end of the executive, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, in person of D. Maxwell Sakimaya Sr., talking about this country will not support unconstitutional vacant power in the sub-region. And I can recall last year, he also headed a joint mediation meeting to Guinea, Mamadi Doumbouya.
Doumbouya, right.
Yeah, I had some meeting, there were some talks, but these issues are increasing, and Liberia is now going into election. Firstly, what do you make of coup d'etat in the region? We front on that, it's still happening.
But we have a practical experience about that. I think during the start of my intro, I talked about, dating back from the 1980, what we saw Liberia go through when the Tabas's own presidency was being overthrown. And between 1980, we saw the Nima Ray 1, 2, 3, and then coming up to 1985, we saw how Liberia, because a process of coup automatically suspend the constitution, and so most of the action governance process will no longer be democratic. It will be more of a dictatorial leading process. So it is fearful that you will not have equal participation. You will not have, I can say, maybe a legislative decisions. You may not have a Supreme Court to have final say in most of what may become the decision.
There won't be any normal.
There won't be any normal function. So automatically, it becomes a military decision that is quote unquote sanctioned by the CRC or the chief executive. So it becomes a one man who just gives military instruction, and everyone else you follow lead. So we have to disappoint that. We have to go against that strongly, because Liberia suffered that, and we are still recovering from the 1980 coup, and then leading to what we saw in 1985, and Liberia slipping into war that took us to a back-to-back 14-year war that broke this country, a history that broke this country and set this country far back covered as a country, people, and as a state. So
one of the issues, sorry for the interruption,
Yeah.
it has to do with tenure. African leaders will make commitment that
Yeah, but I will
they'll
come
go
to-
for
we'll
one
come to
term,
that,
two
but-
term, and
but
after that,
we
even though that's
yeah.
not a justifiable reason, though.
But those are some of the things that are giving room for coup and coup d'etats. That is, you cannot remain in power perpetually. So if we're saying we're giving room for a democratic process, the democratic process should be meant by fairness, should be meant by credibility. That is, if you serve your 2 terms, I mean, you just take a walk and then someone else can come through. But in the process of amending constitution and then favoring the incumbent to stay into power, it has a way of encouraging the issue we talk about coup. We saw it with Guinea. Guinea is just next door. When the process of Professor Alpha Conde went to amend the constitution, we saw that trouble was coming. And it didn't take long. Today we have military regime that have taken over Guinea. We've seen it happen in Mali. We've seen it happen in Burkina Faso. I think I just read online this morning, the Burkina Faso president, the military commander just returned from Russia. You understand it? So I need to read more to know what was his mission and why most of these countries that involve the coup d'etat are leaning on the side of Russia so much.
And Liberia did not participate in that Russian African summit.
Yeah, so Liberia did not because it has an honor tone. And but from a foreign policy standpoint, Liberia know what she wants, and Liberia know her allies from the diplomatic standpoint. That is, we have the U.S. Close to us. We work with the United Nations. We so there's a whole lot. So I think from a wisdom standpoint, Liberia actually know what she wants and where she found herself. So she's being mindful and guided on its diplomatic tie with the United States, with other countries that don't want to just allow themselves to be played around. I think that was a wise decision. But we discourage any forms of coup d'etat. And I think sitting as a democratic government and you support coup d'etat, then of course automatically you have erased that line of democracy that you enjoy. So I think the government, the Liberian government decision is highly welcome to not support any form of coup d'etat. And then with the advocacy about discouraging coup in Africa is something that need to be amplified, so that ECOWAS need to step up very strongly, because it's being analyzed that the coup that have seen Africa in less than 2 years, where you have almost 4 or 5 countries now, they all happening in West Africa.
Sure.
So a West African bloc, which is the ECOWAS, should be on top of its game. What is the the ECOWAS doing to discourage the issue of coup d'etat? The broad responsibility is on the shoulder of ECOWAS. So this is where we want to see the strength of ECOWAS. How influential is ECOWAS? Because in a regional bloc, you have a regional institution, the ECOWAS should have control of its members. It's standing up to democracy, upholding the tenets of democracy, and of course ensuring that there is no form of military takeover that should be encouraged. And if it happens, how can we go back and discourage and repair and bring the country back to a democratic state? Those are things that we want to see ECOWAS moving towards. But it has been challenging, and I think ECOWAS should also do have their own challenge. They have their in-house they need to work on. And like somebody said, the very thing ECOWAS want to fight against is what some of the ECOWAS states are still promoting. That is corruption. The high level of corruption in country also give room for people, military takeover. That I think I heard the military regime, the military government now in Niger asking the finance minister to give report of the country's money in 24 hours or he face execution. I heard something that is, unconfirmed. But if they're asking that the government report on its accountability path.
But that's another issue, because you two are not legitimate. How should you ask someone?
So that's another situation. But we're saying that whatever we give room for military takeover should be cut short right now, and we put benchmark into place to discourage coup d'etat. And of course, reducing the overpower of the military or securities is something that needs to be. Democracy must flourish. Democracy must be enjoyed. Let no one group of people have absolute power, exclusive power that cannot be contested. Then they can overly use those power to see to do what they are doing right now. So I think those are things that we need to see our government, this region, actually try to work on. But it's alarming that you got more than 4 countries that are militarily being governed in the ECOWAS basin. I think that's a challenge, and that is alarming and creating so much fear. So neighboring countries are like, what's happening? What's happening? So our government discouraging and standing against that is a sign of we being committed to democracy and want to see democracy flourish in our region and in the country and the world over.
Thank you very much, sir. It was nice having you. Great conversation with the Secretary General of the Civil Society Human Rights Advocacy Platform, Adaman Kiatamba. Demster, we've been discussing a wide range of issues. We'll be here on Friday for the weekend edition. As always, as we are gradually moving towards the October elections, we will keep talking about peace, we'll keep talking about elections and other issues surrounding it. Many thanks to the entire crew who helped in making this edition a success. Until Friday, I'm Julius Compton. Bye-bye for now.
Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues, be it politics, education, health, agriculture, human interest, and a lot more. Join your host, Julius Compton, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. for the program Boss Talk, showing live on Satcom Channel 4. Boss Talk, this is your most informative and educative show that brings you face to face with the experts and national leaders to discuss trending national issues.